There is something faintly uncomfortable about the comparison, almost awkward in its implications. The most sophisticated military-industrial system Europe had ever assembled, Germany in the early 20th century, could build highways that stretched to the horizon, airships that crossed continents, and rockets that would one day leave the atmosphere. Yet it could not build an infantry rifle that survived longer in real service than a weapon conceived in the age of Queen Victoria by the son of a Scottish watchmaker. James Paris Lee never lived to see what his invention would become. He died in 1904, the very year the British Army formally adopted the rifle that would evolve into the short magazine Lee-Enfield. Across the Channel, German engineers were already refining the Gür 98, a Mauser design so elegant and mechanically sound that it is still revered as one of the finest bolt-action systems ever produced. By every technical metric, the Germans were right to be proud. The Mauser offered tighter tolerances, superior long-range accuracy, and a controlled feed action so robust that American hunters still pay premium prices for it today. On paper, it was the better rifle. And yet, walk into a gun shop in Peshawar this afternoon and you will find Lee-Enfields for sale. Working rifles. Rifles carried by shepherds in the Hindu Kush, feared by poachers in East Africa, and issued to Canadian Rangers patrolling above the Arctic Circle. Try finding a Mauser 98 in comparable military service anywhere on Earth. Try finding one being cleaned tonight by a young conscript preparing for patrol tomorrow morning. You will not, because they are all gone. Every German service rifle from both world wars has passed out of military life and into museums, collections, and hunting fields. They are admired, preserved, and studied. But they are no longer tools of war. The Lee-Enfield is. It simply refuses to disappear. This is not a story about which rifle was better. It is a story about engineering philosophy, about what happens when perfection competes with practicality. It is about logistics, empire, industrial scale, and the uncomfortable economics of fighting modern wars. The numbers alone are revealing. From 1895 to the present day, factories across Britain, its empire, and the Commonwealth produced roughly 17 million Lee-Enfield rifles in dozens of variants. It served officially with the armed forces of more than 46 nations. It fought in the Boer War, the First and Second World Wars, Korea, both Indo-Pakistani conflicts, the Malayan Emergency, the Mau Mau Uprising, Suez, and nearly every forgotten colonial or post-colonial conflict in between. Even today, it remains in limited service with reserve and auxiliary forces in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, and with Canadian Rangers in the far north. Germany, by contrast, produced approximately 14 million Mausers of all military variants between 1898 and 1945. Exceptional rifles, so good that American ordnance officers after the Second World War judged them mechanically superior to their own Springfields. Designs so influential they became the foundation of nearly every successful bolt-action hunting rifle of the 20th century. And yet, as military tools, they are extinct. So the question becomes unavoidable. How does a rifle optimized for rapid fire at short to medium range outlive weapons engineered for precision? How does a 10-round magazine and a cock-on closing bolt endure longer than the acknowledged king of controlled feed accuracy? How does cheap survive when excellent does not? The answer begins in South Africa at the turn of the century, when the British Empire made an embarrassing discovery. Its soldiers were dying in large numbers at the hands of farmers. The Boer War was expected to be brief. 60,000 irregular fighters against the largest empire on earth. London bookmakers gave it a few months. Instead, it dragged on for nearly 3 years and cost Britain over 40,000 casualties. What went wrong was not courage. It was preparation. Boer commandos, armed largely with German-supplied Mauser Model 1895 rifles, demonstrated that disciplined marksmanship with modern repeating rifles could devastate infantry still trained for 19th-century warfare. At Magersfontein in December 1899, concealed riflemen shattered a British assault in minutes, killing or wounding more than 900 men. Officers who expected volleys and bayonet charges walked straight into precise, aimed fire at ranges they had never seriously trained to fight. British infantry entered the war carrying the Lee Metford, a transitional rifle that combined Lee's bolt and magazine system with barrels designed for black powder ammunition. It was already obsolete. The Metford rifling wore rapidly under cordite loads, sometimes losing accuracy in just a few thousand rounds. Soldiers reported barrels so eroded that bullets tumbled in flight. The Boers, meanwhile, could hit reliably at 600 yards. For the British Army, this was intolerable. And, critically, it listened. By 1904, the short magazine Lee-Enfield was adopted. The problematic Metford rifling was replaced with Enfield pattern grooves capable of handling cordite. The barrel was shortened, producing a rifle compact enough for infantry, cavalry, and artillery crews alike. One rifle. One ammunition supply. One training system. This standardization was revolutionary, and it reflected a truth German planners would repeatedly underestimate. In industrial war, logistics win battles long before marksmanship does. The SMLE evolved continuously. The Mark III, introduced in 1907, simplified production while improving reliability. Changes came not from theorists but from soldiers. Men writing reports from barracks, trenches, and colonial outposts where the rifle was actually used. By 1914, Britain had nearly 1 million Lee-Enfields in service and, more importantly, soldiers trained to exploit them. The doctrine was known as the Mad Minute, and it would soon convince German intelligence that the British Expeditionary Force possessed far more machine guns than it actually did. They were wrong. What Britain had was 10 years of marksmanship training built around a rifle designed for rapid, aimed fire. That lesson would be delivered to the German army on a grey August morning in Belgium, beside a canal near an unremarkable mining town called Mons, on the day the 20th century truly learned how modern wars would be fought. What the German planners encountered at Mons was not a new weapon, but a reality they had never modeled. Their officers had trained against expectations shaped by continental warfare, slow, deliberate rifle fire from massed conscripts, casualty projections derived from Franco-Russian precedent. Those calculations did not include the Mad Minute. Instituted in 1908, the Mad Minute was a formal British musketry standard. A trained infantryman was required to place 15 aimed rounds into a 12-inch target at 300 yards within 60 seconds. That was the minimum. Skilled soldiers routinely doubled it. Some, like Sergeant Instructor Alfred Snoxall, reportedly reached 38 hits in a minute, an achievement debated in documentation but never in spirit. At Mons, this training translated into devastation. German infantry advancing across open ground encountered a volume of precise fire that intelligence assessments insisted was impossible without machine guns. British soldiers worked the SMLE's bolt without breaking their sight picture, cycling the action while the rifle remained shouldered. The 10-round magazine, twice the capacity of the Mauser, reduced pauses. The rear locking bolt, weaker in theory than the Mauser's front locking lugs, proved faster and smoother in practice. Everything about the Lee-Enfield favored speed. German rifles were better instruments of precision. British rifles were better instruments of killing. After-action reports consistently overestimated British machine gun numbers by factors of 3 to 5. Some German units claimed to have faced automatic weapons that simply were not present. The truth was more unsettling. Trained British infantry could deliver sustained rates of aimed fire that German doctrine did not believe shoulder-fired weapons could achieve. This advantage was not mechanical. It was institutional. The Mauser 98 could, in expert hands, approach similar rates. But German doctrine did not create those hands. Prussian training emphasized mass assault, artillery preparation, and bayonet spirit. Rifle marksmanship was secondary. Britain, humiliated in South Africa, had spent a decade building a professional culture centered on rapid, disciplined fire. The retreat from Mons eventually solidified into trenches. In static warfare, the Lee-Enfield speed advantage mattered less. Machine guns and artillery became the principal killers. But the rifle never lost relevance. Trench raids demanded reliability at close quarters. Sniping required sufficient accuracy. Mud, blood, and neglect punished every design, and here the Lee-Enfield's generous tolerances proved more forgiving than the tightly fitted Mausers opposite them. By November 1918, British and Commonwealth forces had fired an estimated 2 billion rounds of .303 ammunition. Many of the rifles that fired them had been issued in 1914, rebuilt, refurbished, but fundamentally unchanged. The Mark III required no redesign during 4 years of industrialized slaughter. Germany, by contrast, began searching for a replacement before the armistice ink had dried. German engineering culture rested on a powerful assumption. Precision manufacturing produced superior weapons, and superior weapons won wars. That belief had shattered French fortresses in 1870, challenged British naval dominance, and would later produce extraordinary tanks, aircraft, and rockets. Applied to infantry rifles, it concealed a fatal flaw. The Gur 98 was a masterpiece. Paul Mauser's controlled feed action remains a benchmark a century later. Its front locking lugs handled stress efficiently. Its claw extractor virtually eliminated feeding failures. Factory accuracy exceeded what British arsenals could achieve without hand-fitting. None of this mattered as much as German planners believed. The Mauser's 90-degree bolt throw was slower than the Lee-Enfield 60. The 5-round internal magazine held half the ammunition. At nearly 49 inches, the rifle was cumbersome in trenches, vehicles, and urban fighting. German soldiers called it the broomstick, not affectionately. By 1935, German ordnance officers acknowledged these limitations with the Karabiner 98K, a shorter rifle, closer in length to what Britain had adopted 3 decades earlier. But the action remained unchanged. The magazine remained unchanged. The bolt throw remained unchanged. Germany entered the Second World War with millions of rifles that were already conceptually outdated. What followed was a procurement disaster. Between 1939 and 1945, Germany adopted and discarded a succession of designs. The failed G41 variants, the improved but flawed G43, the superb but scarce FG42, and finally the revolutionary STG44, arriving too late and in too few numbers to alter the war's outcome. Throughout it all, the ordinary soldier still carried the Karabiner 98K. Britain did the opposite. The No. 4 Lee-Enfield, introduced in 1941, was not an upgrade but a simplification. The action was unchanged from 1907. The caliber remained .303. The 10-round magazine remained. A soldier from Mons could operate it instantly. This was not stagnation. It was discipline. Britain understood that industrial wars are won by logistics, training continuity, and manufacturing scale, not by endless redesign. Germany chased innovation. Britain perfected adequacy. Dunkirk should have ended the Lee-Enfield. In 9 days, the British Army abandoned nearly all its equipment in France. Tens of thousands of vehicles and roughly 90,000 rifles. What followed demonstrated the decisive advantage of distributed production. Lee-Enfields were manufactured not just in Britain, but in Canada, Australia, and India. When the Blitz disrupted factories at home, production shifted beyond German reach. German rifle manufacturing remained concentrated within Europe. By 1943, Allied bombing shattered it. The simplified No. 4 could be produced in half the time of its predecessor. It armed British forces from El Alamein to Burma, where monsoon conditions destroyed lesser weapons. Lee-Enfields functioned after immersion in swamps, after weeks without maintenance. They asked only for ammunition and occasional oil. Germany's rifles performed adequately on the Eastern Front, even in extreme cold, but adequacy was meaningless when Soviet production exceeded German output by multiples. By 1944, Germany reissued First World War rifles to militia units. Britain was producing enough Lee-Enfields not only for its armies, but for resistance movements across occupied Europe. Lose one, another arrived. Break one, the parts fit any other rifle of the same decade. Germany's excellence created weapons soldiers cherished. Britain's pragmatism created weapons empires could give away. When the war ended, German military rifles vanished. Millions of captured Karabiner 98K rifles were seized, scrapped, or dismantled. Factories were stripped and shipped as reparations. By 1950, the Mauser lineage survived only in museums and hunting fields. The Lee-Enfield did not. Independent India inherited Ishapur arsenal and continued production, later adapting the rifle to 7.62 NATO. Pakistan followed the same path. Australia and New Zealand retained theirs for years. Canadian Rangers never abandoned them at all, because nothing else worked reliably at -40. This survival was not nostalgia. It was economics, geography, and institutional memory. The rifle designed for empire outlived the empire itself. And it is still here. That persistence did not end with the Second World War. It accelerated. In 1948, Britain entered the Malayan Emergency, a 12-year counterinsurgency fought almost entirely in jungle terrain. Here, rate of fire mattered far less than reliability at close range. Lee-Enfields proved ideal, resistant to humidity, forgiving of dirt, and dependable after weeks without proper maintenance. The same rifle reappeared in Kenya during the Mau Mau uprising from 1952 to 1960, carried by colonial forces and, through capture, by insurgents themselves. In 1956, during the Suez Crisis, Egyptian troops armed with Lee-Enfields faced British paratroopers who also carried them, often in the shortened number 5 jungle carbine configuration. Empire, rebellion, and intervention all met behind the same bolt. Germany, meanwhile, had no rifles at all. Post-war law prohibited West Germany from maintaining a standing army. When rearmament finally came in 1955, German soldiers were issued Belgian-made FN-FALs, later replaced by domestically produced G3s. The Mauser tradition survived only in the sporting market. Fine walnut stocks and controlled feed actions sold to American hunters who admired craftsmanship, not combat utility. By 1970, active German military rifles from either World War effectively numbered 0. Lee-Enfields in service numbered in the millions, spread across every continent except Antarctica. The rifle had outlived its rivals, the empire that fielded it, the colonial system it enforced, and the industrial era that produced it. A weapon designed for Victorian soldiers was still killing people in the age of jet aircraft and television. German masterpieces had become antiques before most of their users reached middle age. A photograph circulated quietly in 2012. Few understood what it showed. A Canadian sniper in Afghanistan lay on a hillside, modern optics and body armor framing a rifle that looked impossibly old. It was a Lee-Enfield, still operational more than a century after James Paris Lee's death. This was not nostalgia. It was necessity. Nowhere is that clearer than in Canada's north. The Canadian Rangers patrol over 4 million square kilometers of Arctic territory, where temperatures routinely drop below -40. At such extremes, modern lubricants congeal, polymers shatter, and complex optics fail. The Lee-Enfield, built entirely of steel and wood, functions with minimal oil and wide tolerances. Rangers report rifles firing after burial in snow or weeks of exposure to ice and wind. Canada tried 3 times to replace it. All 3 attempts failed. The C-19 rifle, finally adopted in 2014, was explicitly engineered to match Lee-Enfield reliability in extreme cold, an implicit admission that a century-old design remained the benchmark. Afghanistan provided a different validation. Insurgent forces frequently carried Lee-Enfields, captured, inherited, or purchased through the Khyber Pass arms trade. Peshawar gunsmiths still manufacture functional copies using hand-forged parts and 19th-century techniques. A serviceable rifle can cost the equivalent of 12 pounds. Ammunition remains plentiful because India, Pakistan, and other nations never stopped producing .303 British. The result is one of history's ironies. A rifle built to enforce imperial power now arms tribes resisting Western intervention, firing ammunition made by former colonial subjects. The weapon has changed sides so often that the concept of sides no longer applies. Beyond combat, Lee-Enfields serve roles their designers never imagined. Indian police use them for rural patrols. Bangladeshi border guards carry them along the Myanmar frontier. Nepali units rely on them in high-altitude terrain. In East Africa, private security guards use them to protect wildlife reserves. The same rifle that once armed colonial game wardens now defends elephants from extinction. The sporting world sustains parallel demand. Hunters trust Lee-Enfield actions for dangerous game. Competitive shooters in Australia and New Zealand maintain active target disciplines. Collectors prize matching number examples with verified provenance, fully aware that the rifle could still be fired tomorrow. Germany's Mauser 98 survives as well, but only as a sporting action or museum piece. No military on Earth issues a Mauser pattern rifle today. The action lives on. The service weapon does not. The Lee-Enfield endures because it occupies a space modern designs cannot economically replace. It is too inexpensive to discard in developing nations, too reliable to abandon in extreme environments, and too simple to render obsolete through technology. Every advance that should have killed it instead proved how little those advances matter in practice. A 12-pound rifle performs the same task as a 1,200-pound one when the requirement is a bullet on target at 200 meters. The numbers close the case. Approximately 17 million Lee-Enfields produced across 129 years. Adopted by 46 nations. Active service spanning 3 centuries. Verified operational use today in Canada, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal, with informal use across Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia. Germany produced roughly 14 million Mauser pattern rifles across 47 years. Peak deployment came in 1944. Complete military extinction followed within a decade. This disparity is not coincidence. 3 factors explain Lee-Enfield immortality. First, distributed manufacturing. Production spanned continents. When British factories burned, Indian and Australian plants continued. When empire ended, successor states inherited complete industrial capability. Germany concentrated production in facilities vulnerable to bombing and dismantlement. Second, design philosophy. The Lee-Enfield was built for mud, heat, cold, and neglect. German rifles were optimized for precision and elegance, advantages that rarely justified their manufacturing cost under combat conditions. Third, ammunition continuity. The .303 British cartridge has been produced continuously since 1889, on every inhabited continent. When German ammunition factories fell silent, German rifles became inert artifacts. These forces reinforced each other over decades. Ammunition availability justified rifle retention. Rifle retention justified continued production. The cycle sustained itself. The lesson extends beyond firearms. The weapon that wins is not the most refined, the most accurate, or the most admired. It is the one that arrives, functions, and can be replaced when lost. War is logistics. Empire is logistics. Germany built masterpieces. Britain built tools. James Paris Lee died believing he had designed a competent rifle and nothing more. He never saw Mons, Burma, or Arctic patrols where his mechanism still works flawlessly. He never imagined Khyber Pass gunsmiths treating his bolt as sacred geometry. He certainly never imagined that a rifle costing less than a restaurant meal would outlast the finest products of German engineering. But it did. It does. And somewhere in the Hindu Kush tonight, as the sun falls behind mountains older than any empire, a shepherd cleans a Lee-Enfield his grandfather carried, trusting, as millions have before him, a rifle that refuses to die.